I have poured an insane amount of hours into both Battlefront games. Over these past 5 years, Battlefront has been involved in some way or another in my life, and over that time I think I've acquired a deeper understanding on how these games are made. I mean, hell, I used to play these games so much they basically became my college game. You know, that game, usually multiplayer, that consumes maybe unhealthy proportion of your college years. The game that you get all your buddies to play when they come over, have some LAN parties, crush a couple drinks, and have a good ass time. You know, I know you know, because it seems like that game for many of the older folks on the internet was Halo 2, and man, those old videos look legendary. Well, the equivalent for me is Battlefront, and I would really like it if we got another one. It's so good. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and whether the Mandalorian as a prominent theme could work for the next game. But first, let me explain how I see the industry and explain how others say the next game could work. See, during these aforementioned college years, I studied in the fields of corporate finance and investment vehicles, basically all the fancy Wall Street and executive type shit. And I studied it ironically because I wanted to be a part of, or at least understand, the class of people I saw taking gaming in a worse directions. Investors and executives, so to speak. Quick side note, don't do this. Holy shit, do not pick your college degree based on what the internet has decided is the problem your favorite hobby or such is having. I was really only on the internet for a year at that point. I had to make the decision on what to study, and I hadn't really felt any actual effects on gaming prior to be told me by some reactionaries on the internet what the real problems were. I mean, the course I went on was still a likely path for me, but I put way too much weight, dude, on what some angry strangers on YouTube and such were saying. I got really lucky, it worked out for me, and I did enjoy it. Hell, I even got a second degree, but I know now how stupid I would have felt if I didn't enjoy that degree. A degree the internet has essentially had a hand in choosing for me. Wild. Anyway, I believe I have a good enough understanding now of how massive corporations run. I mean, like literally, I spent 5 years studying the topics. And with that comes a perspective a lot of commentators seem to lack or not really understand at all. Don't get me wrong here, it's not like I can predict what all corporations are going to do, but it does mean I can get a pretty good understanding of how they operate by examining their past actions through my high-level corporate finance degree lens. While I could tell you, for possibly hours at this point, what EA's likely plan for Battlefront is, I'll just point to the fact that we can't possibly know, but the most educated assumption is that one isn't in the works. However, if, for whatever reason, a Battlefront 3 would be a good tool in renegotiations with Disney, then a BF3 might come quicker than expected, and is most likely at some point in development. Again, I have no idea if having BF3 ready, so to speak, would be good for this, or even a necessary move in negotiations. That depends on how Disney negotiates. And how Disney negotiates with its partners is something that we have no knowledge of. But if there is a next game, others on YouTube and beyond who have actually studied game design or have worked for big game companies have suggested that the next installment might be a subtitled entry. But what is a subtitle? A subtitled entry is an entry into a game franchise that focuses on one theme for its experience and appropriately puts that subtitle under the main title. Think Grand Theft Auto with Vice City or Chinatown Walls, Call of Duty with Black Ops, or probably the most appropriate, Battlefront with Elite Squadron and Renegade Squadron. Yeah, those games. The main content is focused on a theme and generally allows for focus rather than an all-encompassing experience. A hypothetical would be a Clone Wars Battlefront, which would be limited to the prequels and Clone Wars TV show era. No original trilogy, no Old Republic, and so on, but rather freedom to explore more obscure material from this era, although I'm sure most fans wouldn't see it as obscure, but in terms of Star Wars as a whole, it kinda would be. I can see the upsides of a subtitled entry and very much enjoyed in other franchises, and although I prefer Battlefront 3 more in the vein of what we have now, I'm quite indifferent to a subtitled entry either way. With this, however, if a subtitled entry is possible for the next entry, and reports of a cancelled Battlefront spin-off shows it very much is possible, then the fans will probably seek a theme that is hot right now, at this moment, despite how long the process takes. And companies would be more than happy to oblige. That, right now, is obviously The Mandalorian, with the Season 2 finale having just aired. It is on fire right now and is universally loved by the fans, as was expected despite what some reactionaries will tell you. However, would The Mandalorian work as a theme? I'm not going to spoil The Mandalorian here, everything will be vague enough to avoid any exposure to plot or characters you might not have seen yet. That being said, let's get into this. I'm not a film or TV critic in any way, but I can still recognize one of the things the show does amazingly well, and that is how it funnels its experience outwards to the wider Star Wars universe. At the beginning of the show, the focus is very much on the main character, the bounty hunting theme, and the depiction of the setting in a certain tone. As it progresses, it slowly funnels out and starts incorporating aspects from other Star Wars properties, and then starts slowly bending and expanding its themes, and by the end, the show has managed to progress so far from where it started and is connected to so many points, it becomes a piece of art incorporating many characters, themes, and settings from all around the Star Wars universe. It manages to achieve this brilliantly by making sure the story is told from the perspective of the main character. Every introduction to an expansion into the Star Wars universe is done through their perspective and in a masterful way as well. A bit of expository and important dialogue relating to knowledge people who have seen the Clone Wars might have is delivered in such a natural way you would forgive someone for thinking it was written exclusively for The Mandalorian. Again, all because of this perspective. For the TV show, this is great, but for a subtitled game, I don't think it would work. The themes of the show change over time and have, now with the finale, landed in a space where it's more Return of the Jedi than Rogue One. Rogue One is very much focused on the rebellion and even further infiltration actions of the rebellion. It is a very focused experience that mostly only references other aspects from the universe. This works well for it, as it does for Solo, keeping the blockbuster length focused on a central theme. The Mandalorian, however, has the freedom to expand into much wider themes. The show, possibly because of its format, incorporates so many important elements that are important elements of so many differently themed Star Wars experiences. Again, it avoids these clashes of themes masterfully in the show, but a multiplayer shooter just doesn't get that privilege, at least not from launch. Choose the beginning of the show and you don't have much to work with. Plus, fans would not be happy leaving the show they know now for an earlier, less developed version of characters and themes and such. Choose the end of the show for a setting, and there's so many developed themes and characters existing that are already present, you've basically just made Battlefront 3 with the inclusion of Mandalorian characters, defeating the purpose of a subtitled game at all. Third option, of course, would be to start at the beginning of the show and through a live service incorporate all the elements of the entire show. That would go from subtitled game to fully fledged game. However, I don't really see the point to this, especially because the game will eventually end up as basically Battlefront 3, defeating the subtitles and just becoming Battlefront 3, and releasing Battlefront 3 type game or releasing a Battlefront 3 type game is a more popular choice in the first place. Other subtitle entries into Battlefront franchises could work. Hell, any one of the eras could be a subtitle as its own, given that they stick to each era in question. I know the Clone Wars era entry would go wild. I just don't think The Mandalorian is attempting to carve out its own distinct identity, but rather elegantly glide between others. Oh, and the argument that it could be just like setting a game in the original trilogy as a subtitle, I say they already made that game back in 2015, and I think their decision to expand into a title with all three eras was the correct decision. Going back to the OT and justifying it solely as the Mandalorian theme, even though it incorporates so many more properties like Rebels and such, wouldn't be representative of what it actually is, and that would most likely not be the original theme for the subtitle. But who knows, maybe in 2021 The Mandalorian, featuring content from Rebel Squadrons and Aftermath, will be announced.